Passive income looks the same number on every spreadsheet. In real life, it is never the same life twice. It starts at $10. It ends 5 years later at 10,000. Nobody believes the gap is real until they've lived inside both ends of it. Level 1. $10 a month. You check your banking app on a Tuesday before work. $9.42. Interest from a savings account you forgot you opened. It doesn't change your morning. Same job, same rent, same 11 days until payday. The commute is 40 minutes each way, the same playlist on rotation because choosing a new one feels like effort you don't have. At your desk, the spreadsheet you actually get paid to maintain is more familiar to you than your own bank statement. At lunch, your coworker Dana scrolls past a stock app ad and laughs. $10 a month, she says. That's not going to do anything. She isn't wrong. Not yet. $10 buys nothing. It doesn't cover a coffee, let alone a bill. But for the first time, money made you money instead of the other way around. That night, you sit with the rent due in 4 days and a balance that makes the math uncomfortable in the usual way. You pay it anyway, the way you always do, with nothing left over and a faint headache from doing the subtraction twice. It's a small thing. It does not feel like freedom. It feels like the first page of a much longer book you didn't know you were reading. You open 3 browser tabs about index funds. You close 2 of them, half convinced this is for people with more money than you, not less. You don't tell anyone. There's nothing to tell yet, but something has shifted, quietly, in the part of your brain that tracks numbers. 6 months pass the way they always do, slowly, then all at once. Level 2, $100 a month. 6 months later, the number is $103.18. Half is dividends. Half is interest you've stopped thinking about. It covers your phone bill now. The whole thing, every month, without you doing anything. You notice the difference less in your bank account and more in a small, specific relief. One bill that used to require timing around payday now just gets paid, automatically, like it was never a problem to begin with. Dana notices you've stopped joining happy hour. You're not broke anymore, she says, half joking. You're just cheap on purpose. She's closer to right than she knows. You've started doing the math on everything, what a dinner out costs versus what that same money could be making instead. It isn't fun math. It's the only kind that started to matter. At home, you start reading about something called house hacking, renting out a spare room to cover your own. It sounds complicated. It sounds like something other people do, people with more confidence, more paperwork, more of a plan than you currently have. You run the numbers anyway, twice, just to see if they're real. You don't have the down payment. You don't have the courage yet either. There's a version of this where you talk yourself out of it by October. You almost do. But you start looking anyway, the way people window shop for a life they're not ready for, scrolling listings at midnight with no intention of calling anyone. Another year moves the way years do when you're busy and broke and slightly more hopeful than before. By the time it's over, the number has changed again, and so, quietly, have you. Level 3, $500 a month. You go to a meetup because a forum post told you to, half expecting a room full of people selling something. Marcus is the one speaking. 40s, plain clothes, no urgency in his voice at all. He doesn't talk about getting rich. He talks about spreadsheets, tenants, and slow math. The kind of math that takes years to look impressive. Afterward, he tells you the spare room in your apartment is worth more than you think. You go home and look at it differently, not as storage, not as the place you keep things you don't use, but as a number you've been sitting on. 3 weeks later, that room has a tenant and a monthly rent of $310. Combined with the dividend account, the total lands at $504 a month. It covers groceries. It covers the electric bill. For the first time, it covers things that matter, not just things that are convenient. Your friends notice you've started saying no to dinners you used to never miss. One friend asks what the spreadsheets are even for. You don't have a short answer. You're not saving for anything specific. You're saving for the version of you that doesn't have to ask permission from your own bank account before making a decision. The tenant in the spare room is quiet, mostly. A few noises through the wall, a missed trash day here and there. Nothing that costs you more than mild irritation. The arrangement works, which surprises you more than it should. Marcus starts texting you listings. Duplexes mostly. Numbers that used to look impossible now look merely difficult. You don't have the down payment. He tells you that's the wrong thing to be focused on yet. That the down payment finds you once the habit is strong enough. For the first time, the goal has a shape. It just doesn't have a number you can afford. You start writing the shape down anyway. Level 4. $1,200 a month. 18 months in, the number is $1,204. A second room is rented out now. The dividend account has grown alongside it, slow and unremarkable, the way most things that actually work tend to be. Dana asks how, this time without the joke in her voice. You tell her. It takes longer to explain than it took to do. 18 months condensed into a 5-minute conversation that leaves out most of the boring parts, which is most of it. $1,200 doesn't cover your rent. It covers the part of you that used to lie awake, doing math at 2 a.m., recalculating the same numbers that never changed, no matter how many times you ran them. For the first time in years, a missed paycheck wouldn't be a crisis. It would just be inconvenient, which is its own kind of luxury. Then a tenant calls at 11 p.m. about a broken sink, and the word passive starts to feel generous. You fix it yourself to save the call-out fee. It takes 2 hours, most of your patience, and a trip to a hardware store that's somehow still open. Marcus laughs when you tell him. Passive income, he says, just means the work moved somewhere you don't see it yet. He sends another listing. A duplex, 2 units, both already rented. You've been saving toward a down payment without quite admitting that's what it was for, calling it an emergency fund in your own head, because admitting the real goal felt too big to say out loud. Marcus walks the property with you. He points out things you wouldn't have known to look for, the slope of a driveway, the age of a water heater, the kind of detail that only matters once you're the one responsible for it. The bank pre-approves you for less than the asking price. Marcus says that's normal. You don't fully believe him. You don't buy it yet. But for the first time, owning something feels like math instead of fantasy. Level 5, $3,000 per month. 2 years in, the duplex closes. Both units are already occupied by the time the paperwork clears, tenants who came with the building, indifferent to the fact that you now own the walls around them. The rent from both units covers the mortgage with $340 left over every month. Combined with the dividend account and a small course you built last year, something you almost didn't finish, something you were sure no one would buy, the total reaches $3,012 a month. It covers half of everything you spend in a month, without an extra hour of work for it. You notice this mostly in the absence of a feeling. The dread that used to show up around the 15th of the month, waiting to see if the numbers would line up, has gotten quieter. At 1 a.m., a pipe bursts in Unit 2. Passive income, again, requires you to be awake. You drive over yourself because the plumber can't come until morning. You mop water at 2 a.m. and think, briefly, about selling everything and going back to just a paycheck, a thought that disappears by the time the floor is dry.
Marcus tells you this is the part nobody puts in the success story. The version where you're on your knees with a towel at 2 in the morning, still calling it an investment. He explains the next step isn't more property. It's giving up control of the property you have. A property manager costs 8% of the rent. It also costs you the late-night calls, which by this point feels like the better trade. You sign the contract the same week the dividend account crosses a number you'd written on a sticky note 2 years earlier, a number that felt aspirational at the time and now just feels like Tuesday. Dana sees your banking app over your shoulder by accident and goes quiet for a second. She doesn't ask how this time. She just nods, like she's recalculating something about you, or about herself. You still go to work the next morning. Nothing about your life looks different from the outside. Level 6, $6,000 per month. 3 years in, you trade the duplex up for a 4-unit property, run entirely by someone else now. The handoff feels strange at first, paying someone to do less work than you used to do for free. Marcus offers you a small stake in a business he's starting. You say yes before you've finished doing the math, which is either trust or recklessness, and you decide not to examine which. It isn't dramatic. It's a signature, a wire transfer, and a quiet drive home. By the end of the year, the combined total is $6,140 a month. It covers your rent, your mortgage on the property, and most of what you spend in a month without thinking about it. Groceries, gas, the small recurring costs that used to require tracking and now just happen. You could theoretically stop working. You haven't, yet. The decision feels bigger than the math, tangled up in identity in a way the spreadsheet doesn't account for. Old friends assume the number means something different than it does. You don't correct them. Nobody at the table has any idea what your bank app looks like. You prefer it that way. The gap between how you live and what you have feels less like a secret and more like a relief. Dana shows you her own brokerage app. A small dividend position started 6 months ago. "It's not much," she says, "but it's something. Because of you." You're sitting in the exact same room where she once told you $10 wouldn't do anything. Neither of you mentions that conversation. You don't think she remembers it the way you do. At home, the spreadsheets take less time now. Most of the decisions have already been made, sitting in motion, requiring maintenance instead of invention. What's left isn't a decision. It's just time, doing what it does when you stop interrupting it. Level 7, $10,000 per month. 5 years in, the deposits land before you've even checked your phone. $10,000 and change, spread across 4 sources you stopped having to think about individually. Rent, dividends, a business distribution, interest that used to be the whole story and is now the smallest line on the page. The property runs itself, mostly.
A manager handles what you used to lose sleep over, and the late-night calls that used to define the word passive have mostly stopped coming to you at all. Marcus and you still meet at the same diner. Neither of you talks about money the way you used to. There's less to prove now. The conversation moves slower, the way conversations do between people who don't need anything from each other, who've already had the conversations that mattered. Dana got promoted last year. She still checks her own portfolio every morning, the habit outliving the need for it. A small ritual that's less about the money now and more about who she's become while building it. You haven't quit your job. The reason's changed. It's no longer about needing the paycheck. It's something closer to not yet knowing who you are without the routine, which is its own kind of honest answer. Mornings don't feel like survival anymore. they just feel like mornings. The fear that used to sit underneath every decision has mostly gone quiet, replaced by something flatter and less dramatic. Competence, maybe, or just the absence of panic. It isn't gone completely. A bad month in the market still tightens something in your chest, the same way it always did, just for shorter periods of time now. Passive doesn't mean untouched. It means the touching happens less, and matters less when it does. You think, sometimes, about the version of you that opened a banking app and saw $9.42. That version didn't know this number was coming. He wasn't trying to predict it. He was just trying to feel a little less behind on a Tuesday in an apartment that's long since changed. He got there anyway, not because of one decision, but because of the same small one repeated for 5 years in rooms nobody was watching. $10 and $10,000 are not different goals. They're the same goal, looked at from 5 years apart. The same Tuesday morning, the same banking app, just enough time between them to make the number unrecognizable.